Emma Caldwell was born to the wild. Raised on a windswept Wyoming ranch, she grew up surrounded by the raw beauty of the plains, galloping horses, soaring hawks, and the distant howl of coyotes under a star-streaked sky. At 10, she'd spend hours nursing orphaned rabbits, her small hands gentle but determined. Her parents, weathered by the land but warm with love, saw her heart and fed it. They took her on treks through Grand Teton National Park, where she'd sketch elk and dream of a life entwined with nature's pulse. By 16, Emma knew her calling, to protect the wild creatures she adored. At 22, Emma graduated from Colorado State University with a degree in wildlife biology. Her college years were a blur of late-night study sessions, field trips to dissect ecosystems, and summers volunteering at a local wildlife rescue. Her professors marveled at her fire. She didn't just study animals, she understood them. After graduation, she landed a job as a ranger in Tanzania's Ngorongoro conservation area. At 24, she stepped onto the savanna, her heart racing as she breathed in the scent of acacia and earth. The landscape felt like home, vast and alive, teeming with stories she couldn't wait to tell. Emma's job was to guide safari tours, and she poured her soul into it. Her voice, rich with wonder, painted pictures for tourists, the secret lives of cheetahs, the ancient wisdom of baobab trees. Visitors hung on her words, caught in her reverence for the wild. Each dawn, as the sun spilled gold over the plains, Emma felt a gratitude so deep it bordered on prayer. She was where she belonged, a steward of a world both fierce and fragile. One blistering afternoon during a routine tour, Emma's instincts flared. A ripple in the tall, sun-bleached grass caught her eye, subtle but urgent. She signaled the jeep to stop, her pulse quickening. "Stay here," she told the tourists, her tone calm but firm. Alone, she crept through the grass, her boots silent on the cracked earth. What she found stole her breath. A lion cub, barely the size of a loaf of bread, curled in a hollow. Its fur was matted, its ribs sharp against its skin. Its amber eyes, clouded with fear, met hers, and Emma's heart shattered. She scanned the horizon for the cub's pride, her ears straining for a roar or rustle. Nothing. The savanna was still, indifferent. The cub was alone, abandoned, its tiny body trembling on the edge of death. Emma's mind raced, but her heart was certain. She couldn't walk away. Kneeling, she whispered, "I've got you," and gently scooped the cub into her jacket. Its warmth against her chest felt like a vow. She carried it back to the jeep, her steps steady despite the weight of what she'd just undertaken. The tourists, a mix of awe and concern, parted to make room. Emma explained, her voice steady but laced with urgency. The cub was starving, alone, and needed help. They nodded, some teary-eyed, as she settled the cub in her lap. The drive back to the ranger station was tense, the cub's faint whimpers cutting through the hum of the engine. Emma stroked its head, her fingers trembling. She felt the fragility of its life, the thin thread tying it to the world. She wouldn't let it snap. At the station, Emma called in the park's veterinary team. Their faces grew grave as they examined the cub. "Severe malnutrition," the lead vet said, his voice tight. "Dehydrated. It won't last without intensive care." The decision was made to transfer the cub to a wildlife sanctuary an hour away. Emma didn't hesitate. "I'm going with him," she said, her tone leaving no room for debate. In the rattling truck, she cradled the cub, whispering promises as the savanna blurred past. She named him Sul, after the sun that burned above, a beacon of the life she'd fight to give him. The sanctuary was a haven of green enclosures and dedicated staff. Sul was placed in a nursery for orphaned predators, a cozy space with soft blankets and heat lamps. Emma, unable to leave his side, pleaded to stay and help. The director, struck by her resolve and knowledge, agreed. Those first days were a crucible. Sul was terrified, his tiny body rejecting the formula offered. He'd curl into a ball, eyes wide as if bracing for the world to abandon him again. Emma refused to let it. She spent sleepless nights by his side, her voice a constant soothe. She sang folk songs her mother taught her, the melodies weaving a thread of safety. She fed him drop by drop, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. "You're stronger than you know," she'd murmur, willing him to believe it. Slowly, Sul responded. His eyes cleared, his purrs grew bolder. One day he nuzzled her hand, and Emma's tears fell freely. It was the first spark of trust, fragile but fierce. Emma became Soul's anchor. She taught him to play, tossing knotted ropes for him to chase, her laughter echoing as he pounced with clumsy zeal. She read to him from her field guides, her voice painting pictures of the savannah he'd one day roam. As Soul grew, Emma trained him in the skills of a lion, stalking mock prey, sharpening his instincts. She marveled at his transformation, from a frail cub to a bundle of muscle and curiosity. At 6 months, Soul was moved to a larger enclosure, a step toward the wild that tugged at Emma's heart. She visited daily, but pushed him to explore. Knowing dependence wasn't freedom, the sanctuary housed other lions, and Emma introduced Soul to them with care. He was cautious, his tail twitching at the sight of older lions. But a young lioness, Luna, caught his attention. Her bold spirit and playful swats drew him out, and soon they were racing across the enclosure, their roars a duet of joy. Emma watched, her chest tight with pride and a bittersweet ache. Soul was finding his place, but she'd always be his first home. Years passed, and Soul grew into a titan. At 4, his mane was a cascade of amber, his gaze both fierce and soulful. Emma, now 28, had risen to a senior ranger, leading conservation projects and mentoring new staff. Her bond with Soul was a constant, a heartbeat in her life. Each visit, he'd bound toward her, pressing his massive head against her chest, his purrs shaking her core. She'd sink her fingers into his mane, whispering memories of their early days, her heart swelling with a love too big for words. But life doesn't bend to dreams. One evening, Emma's phone rang, her mother's voice breaking with news. Her father had suffered a stroke. He needed her, and there was no question. She had to go. The thought of leaving Soul was a knife to her soul. She spent her last day with him under a sprawling acacia, her hand on his flank as the sky bled crimson. "I'll come back," she choked out, tears soaking her cheeks. Soul's eyes held hers, steady and deep, as if he felt her grief. She left with a promise, but fear gnawed at her. Would he remember? In Wyoming, Emma became her father's caretaker. His recovery was a grueling marathon. Small steps forward, then crushing falls back. She worked as a home health aide, her days consumed by hospital rooms and medication schedules. Exhaustion became her shadow, but Soul was her light. She treasured updates from the sanctuary, photos of him basking in the sun, videos of him wrestling Luna. Each glimpse was a lifeline, but the years stretched. 2, then 4, then 7. Her father's condition stabilized, but the cost was time, and Emma felt it slipping through her fingers. At the sanctuary, Soul withered without her. He paced his enclosure, his roars tinged with a longing that broke the staff's hearts. He'd wait by the gate, eyes scanning for Emma, only to slump in defeat when she didn't appear. His coat dulled, his appetite faded. The keepers tried everything, new toys, extra playtime, but Soul was adrift. Veterinarians monitored his weight loss, their worry growing. An animal behaviorist was called, but Soul shut her out, his heart tethered to a woman across an ocean. Emma clung to Soul in her own way. She kept his photo on her nightstand, his fierce gaze a reminder of the life she'd paused. At night, she'd dream of him, his warmth, his roar, the way he'd lean into her touch. As her father grew stronger, hope stirred. At 36, after 7 years, Emma felt the savannah's call again. She contacted the sanctuary, her voice trembling with nerves and longing. Her colleagues were thrilled but cautious. "Soul's different now," they warned. "He might not know you." The day of her return was electric. Emma stood at the sanctuary's gate, her heart a drumbeat. The air smelled of dust and freedom, flooding her with memories. Colleagues embraced her, their warmth a balm, but her focus was Soul. She walked to his enclosure, her boots crunching, her breath shallow. There he was, sprawled on a boulder, his mane a halo in the sunlight. He was massive, regal, but his eyes carried a quiet sorrow that pierced her. The keeper opened the gate, and Emma stepped inside, her pulse a roar in her ears. Soul didn't move, his gaze fixed on the distance. "Soul," she called, her voice breaking. "It's me, buddy." His ears flicked and he turned. his amber eyes locking onto hers. Time dissolved. Recognition flared, and Soul rose, his steps deliberate, powerful. Emma stood frozen, her heart exposed, unsure if he'd see her as a stranger. Soul paused, sniffing the air, his head tilting as if sifting through years. Then with a low, rumbling growl, he closed the gap. Emma braced herself, but instead of a challenge, Soul pressed his forehead to hers, his massive paws resting on her shoulders. It was their old ritual, now heavy with the weight of time. Emma's legs buckled and she sank into him, her arms around his neck, sobbing into his mane. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice raw. "I never stopped loving you." Soul's purr was a deep, soul-shaking hum, a forgiveness that mended her fractured heart. The staff, watching from afar, wept, stunned by a reunion they'd scarcely believed possible. For Emma, it was a miracle, a testament to a love that defied years and oceans. She felt whole, the ache of absence dissolving in Soul's warmth. He nuzzled her, his breath hot against her cheek as if saying, "You're home." From that day, Soul was reborn. His eyes sparkled, his roars rang with vigor. He chased Luna through the enclosure, their play a dance of joy. He greeted keepers with newfound warmth, his spirit unshackled. Emma dove back into her work, her passion fiercer for the years lost. She and Soul spent hours together, their bond a quiet fire. She'd sit with him at dusk, her hand in his mane, the savanna stretching endless before them. Emma's story rippled outward, a beacon for conservationists and dreamers. She spoke at global conferences, Soul's tale a rallying cry for wildlife protection. Her father, now walking with a cane, visited the sanctuary, tears in his eyes as he met the lion who'd anchored his daughter's heart. Emma knew Saul's years were finite, but their love was eternal, a thread woven into the fabric of her soul. Emma and Soul's journey teaches us that love is a force stronger than time, distance, or even the boundaries of species. It calls us to honor the connections we forge, to fight for those we hold dear, and to trust that true devotion can endure any storm. Their reunion is a reminder that the heart carries memories the mind might blur, and that loyalty, rooted in sacrifice and trust, can heal the deepest wounds. In a world often fractured, their story urges us to nurture our bonds with courage and empathy, knowing they can transform lives and echo forever.